What is happening, superfans? You're listening to Behind the Mask, the show where we chat with your favorite superhero fiction authors about the worlds and the heroes that they are writing. Behind the Mask is brought to you by superherofiction.com, which is the world's largest website dedicated to superhero fiction. I'm your host, Franklin Kendrick, and today on the show, this is the first time ever that I have two co-authors at once on the single episode. I'm going to introduce you to Jamie Castle, who is a #1 Audible bestseller and author of a lot, which I'll have him talk about, I'm sure. And also Christopher Vallon. Welcome to the podcast, both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you both on. And
glad to be here.
So this is going to be interesting because I've got questions that are like, how did you get into writing and all this jazz? So it's going to be like who goes first? But I guess this question right off the bat is usually the hardest one. It's going to be tricky this time too. But if you want to tell us a little bit about your secret identities when you're not superheroes behind the keyboard, who are you both out there in the real live world?
You want to go first, Chris?
All right. In addition to writing, I also am a teacher, high school social science teacher. And I've also been a musician and an artist in the past. And I live near LA, Los Angeles.
Oh, so you get the nice weather.
Yeah, we get the nice weather.
Excellent.
No blizzards.
No snow, no shoveling.
No,
ocean.
just earthquakes every once in a while. And fires.
Okay. How many earthquakes have you lived through?
They're actually
all of them. Everyone that he's actually been involved in, he's lived through it. It's 100% historical. He's 100% a survivor of earthquakes. It's amazing.
I moved here over 20 years ago, and there's only 3 that were bad enough that I remember them. But there's little ones every once in a while, and constantly little ones that I don't feel, or there's just a little bit of shaking. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So what about you, Jamie? Who are you when you're not behind the keyboard?
Well, I am also a survivor. I've been through many hurricanes and tornadoes, being from Florida and Texas. I currently live in Texas. I kind of have a real secret identity, which when I first started writing as Jamie Castle, I thought I would never tell anybody who I am. But I'm also Steve Bollier. I own Athon Books, and I write a ton of stuff. But beyond that, I've been a pastor for about 12 years. I've been a metal musician my whole life, toured for several years back. I think Chris did too. So I'm not trying to steal his thunder. We have a lot of crap in common. That's why we work so well together. He's just got a lot more years on me. I live in Fort Worth, Texas, which I believe is where you have the good weather. But hey, whatever. You can, all the Californians come here. So I know.
That's happening. It's real time.
Chris will argue the opposite, that we have a lot of Texans going to California. But
no, there's a reason people move to Texas. That's because it's cheap, because no one wants to live there. They're forced to live there.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it seems like Texans think there's a big rivalry between Texas and California, but California's not aware of it.
Oh, that's funny. That's because we don't have coming in trying to change everything.
Yeah.
But, we'll let that go. So beyond that, I'm a father of 2. I have a wife. I have a house. I have a car, 2 of them.
With kids, you have to.
That's what I do outside of writing, which everything I do has to do with writing. So I don't know how.
And I have a wife and 2 kids too.
There you go.
I can't let him mention it and then me know.
All right.
I wanted.
So you both got full houses. Time is scarce, basically. I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
So my next question for both of you is, what got you both into writing in the first place at the beginning of your writing journey, and then transitioning from that, what got you interested in writing superhero fiction?
Okay. I'll go. I guess I'll take this one. What got me into writing? So I've been writing since I was I think the general answer most authors have is I've been writing as long as I can remember. It's kind of true. I remember writing my first short story when I was about 7 years old. I was on my grandfather's Tandy 1000, which I call ancient equipment. And then Chris goes, "Oh, by the way, I was like 30 when that came out." No, I'm just kidding. And he has given me crap for calling that like ancient, vintage, whatever the word I've used. But I mean, for me, it was the computer that had the keyboard attached, like a laptop does now, but it was barely a step over a typewriter. I mean, it had a graphics program that was sort of like blue background with a yellow line that you could draw, right? So I kind of remember I wrote that short story and then did the book cover. I'm a book cover artist also. So all of those things sort of carried on. And then throughout my years, I've been working at churches since I was 14, preaching and teaching. And so like I've been writing nonfiction, sermon-esque type things since I was really, really young. And I've always written fiction, never accomplished the goal of finishing a book until, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And then since then I've written 15, 16, 17 books, whatever it's been now. So really it's always been a thing. It's just kind of in flux. I wrote music my whole life. So like, it's just been in flux as to what I am writing at the time, but I'm pretty solidly writing fiction at this point in my life.
Coolness. I say, what got, just to add to that, what made you say after all the years of like dabbling in writing, like this one is the one that I'm going to finish?
It's a good question. I mean, as silly as it is, so Chris and I are writing together. I do a lot of co-writing. I love co-writing. I think it probably has to do with the fact that I'm just a people person, right? Like I've pastored for years. Like I love people. I love working with people. And so it just lends itself easily to the process. The first thing that made me finish a project was I started talking to a dude at my church that wrote books. He loved science fiction. I'm like, let's write a book together. And we did it. And by the time we were done, I'm like, oh, that was easy. And I'm like, I could do this. I could actually do this. There's such a, I don't know if stigma is the word, but there's such a a heavy blanket on you to think that it's so hard to write a book. And it is hard to write a good book, but the technical angle of writing a book is like, there's a certain number of words in the book and you just have to meet those goals. And eventually you finish the project. And early on, I didn't have any of those goals in mind. I'm a pantser by nature. So I just write into the dark. And so when you don't have any real goal at all, it's just hard to complete it. And then once you do it once, you're like, oh, that works. Let's just do it. So I needed somebody else. Somebody else came along and went, let's do it together. And I went, oh, sweet. This is doable.
Yeah, it's usually like such a lonely profession until you're done. And then I haven't written a book with anybody, but I've written other stuff with people, and it's so much nicer to get like the instant back and forth and be like, is this crazy? Am I going in the wrong direction?
Right. You get somebody to immediately tell you how stupid your idea is.
Yes,
so that you don't spend
you don't
7 days working on a stupid idea just to realize it's a stupid idea.
Yes, and you throw out a lot less.
Yeah. Exactly.
So let me jump over to you, Chris. What same questions. What got you into writing, and then what made you want to write superhero fiction?
Mostly I would get obsessed with things when I was a little kid, like King Kong first, and then Planet of the Apes, and then Batman and Star Trek and Star Wars. And so, from a young age, I just wanted to create my own stories, and I would play with my action figures and make up stories with them. And then I really got into comic books when I was, 6 or 7 years old, and started writing and drawing my own comic books. I mostly wanted to be an artist, and I mostly wrote the stories just so I had something to draw.
Yes.
and then when I got older, I tried. I didn't like continue with it constantly, but when I was in college or when I was in high school, I wrote a couple stories and did a comic strip. And when I was in college, I was in a theater class, and we had to write our own plays, and I ended up being the one to write the play. And I thought, oh, that wasn't that hard. It was a 1-act play. And then, so then I looked at the fact that Star Trek, at the time, Deep Space Nine, was taking scripts from anybody. And a friend of mine and I decided to write a script together for Deep Space Nine. And right when we finished it and sent it in, like literally after I mailed it to them to read, they announced that they were not going to do that anymore.
Oh.
So then my
Of
next
course.
script was my own thing. I decided to start writing screenplays. So I've written, I don't know, something 30, 40 screenplays and teleplays of all different types over the last 20 plus years. And then in 2007, I entered a contest called Kirk versus Picard that was put on by CBS Interactive, and I was one of the winners of there were 4 weeks, 4 acts, and I won one of the weeks. And those of us who won and some other people that were really involved in the contest decided to start writing together, writing short stories together. And I hadn't really done much short story writing at that time, but we started writing short stories and publishing anthologies as a group. And then we wrote a novel as a group, which was kind of complicated because there's 10 of us.
Jeez. I can only imagine.
Yeah. But mostly, meanwhile, I also got my master's degree in history, and I expanded my book into my master's thesis into a book, and that got published by a small press history, naval history publisher, and then kind of took off from there. I started writing more stories and mostly science fiction, but I love superheroes. I wrote some superhero short stories too.
Yes. So would you say that your background as a screenwriter has it helped you making the transition to writing books where you're more well versed probably in like the mechanics of story, or is it a completely different beast?
There's a lot of differences, but I think that basically you have a beginning, middle, and ending. So I like Jamie. I like writing my stories with other people because of my screenwriting background. I'm so used to not putting in a lot of detail that when I write on my own, it reads almost like a screenplay. It's like this happens. It's mostly dialogue and quick action, and I leave out like what the room looks like and stuff like that. And that's why I need a co-writer like Steve to like
Jamie.
Help.
Just kidding.
Jamie,
I'm kidding.
sorry.
Call me whatever you want. I'm just kidding.
To help me out with the details, basically the descriptions.
Oh yeah, I think I've struggled the most with making it not sound like just a conversation with a couple dialogue tags. So I can relate to that challenge. Let me turn the conversation, the spotlight onto, by the time this podcast comes out, this book will be out, which
So it's out now. So it was out yesterday.
It's out now. Oh, okay. So you have your first book of a new superhero series. Series is called Raptors. First book is called Sidekick. Can you give us sort of a like overview of what this book and series are going to be about?
Surely we could.
Right.
You want to do it?
Yeah, sure. So it's our own superhero universe. When I was a kid, when I was creating my own comic books, I had to create my own characters, and I did. And when I started writing short stories about superheroes later on as an adult, I was using the same characters, just obviously more mature, evolved versions of them. And so these books are about those characters basically, and other ones that Jamie has created as well. And they're in a shared universe that is one of the things growing up was Batman was always my favorite character, and I love DC characters, but I didn't like that they were just always superheroes. The thing I liked about Marvel Comics, even though I didn't necessarily like the characters themselves as much, was the fact that they were like real people that became heroes. They like Peter Parker was a teenager who put on a Spider-Man mask and went out and fought crime, but he had all those teenager problems. I mean, it's well known. I mean, that's what Stan Lee did, and made them relatable. And I think Marvel's evolved since I was a kid, obviously, and they do more of that kind of thing. But it's still kind of stuck in my head that DC was good characters, not so great on the secret identity part. In Marvel,
Mhm.
you know, I didn't necessarily like the characters. I was never like a Spider-Man fan, but I really liked Peter Parker for some reason. So we kind of have the idea of, you know, what if Peter Parker was like a Robin, more of a Robin type of character, you know,
Mhm.
or
I,
Tony
yeah,
Stark.
I think that I agree with, like, I love how like majestic I feel like and like regal the DC heroes are, and it really is like, it's like you say, where they don't do great on the, like, what do these people do when they're not jumping around and like lifting entire cities and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
that's interesting to me.
yeah.
I like that hook.
So like Batman is Batman, and he pretends to be Bruce Wayne. Bruce
Mhm.
Wayne is the mask. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's who he's pretending to be. But Peter Parker is Peter Parker pretending to be Spider-Man. So
I think when we set out to write the Raptors universe, one thing that Chris and I had in mind was that, well, first of all, we're diehard comic book fans. We love comics. We love the movies. We love, you know, if you could see the rest of my office, and I'm sure Chris's area, like, it's like Marvel and DC just threw up everywhere. Right. And then I've got Invincible stuff. I love Invincible and the Image Comics stuff. But like, we love that, and we grew up with that. And what we wanted to do, I don't know the last time you tried to read or listen to Marvel and DC books, but they don't do fiction, novel fiction, the way, at least that I want to hear it. It's very, I don't know how to explain it, and I don't want to be mean or rude or anything like that. So I'm going to leave it there. What we set out to do was create a real breathing novel universe that felt like Marvel and DC's characters. We don't spend a lot of time on trying to convince you why superheroes exist in the world, which is something that Marvel and DC don't do. Readers just accept the fact, right? Like, one of our reviewers recently said just that. They're like, they said something like, the authors don't harp on why the characters are who they are or why the superheroes exist in the world. They just tell us that it is and expect us to understand it. And that's what I think comic book readers like. So we didn't try to, we just gave you characters, told you who they were, and then gave you that Marvel DC feel that I think all of us are dying for, without all the hubbub of Marvel and DC, right? Like, how many times can you tell the same story over and over again? We did it with different characters, and hopefully they're enjoyable characters.
Absolutely. That makes me think the amount of times that I've seen these poor characters in mainstream. I've seen their origins so many times that I'm like, I agree with that reviewer being like, please just get to the exciting parts. I don't care how they got their powers.
Oh, sure. And with all respect to other writers, again, this was something that came out of a review. So I'm going to blame the reviewer for this. But, a lot of superhero fiction out there spends so much time talking about, like, why superheroes exist. There was a meteor, there was a this, and they all got powers, and this person's special because of that. Not that some of those books were fantastic, but I don't really care about that. I just want the story. I want the characters and the love of the characters. How often can we hear how Spider-Man became Spider-Man? Or if I see one more pearl necklace break in an alley, I'm like,
oh my goodness. Yes. Please. It's like, we get the picture.
Or the ship leaving Krypton as it explodes.
Yeah, poor Krypton. It's exploded so many different ways. So yeah. I guess my next question is launching off of this, which is do you follow just one singular hero, or are there multiple heroes?
Sawyer's our main character, Sawyer William Vincent, which is 3 first names, but don't worry. Sawyer is our main character. He is the Red Raptor. Book 1 follows him completely. It's told in the first person, breaking the fourth wall, very, very conversational. Book 2 adds a new character, a female superhero that he works closely with in book 1. Book 3 adds his also protege, Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark analog type of character. But we added a POV each time, but Sawyer maintains that role of sort of main character through and through.
Coolness.
You have anything to add, Chris? Want to tell us where the name Sawyer came from?
Oh, my son is named Sawyer.
Oh,
My brother, who passed away a few years ago, who's younger than me, was named William, so I made that his middle name. And then my dad was named Vincent, which I know doesn't sound like a last name, but I actually know people with the last name Vincent.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be cool to kind of honor,
Homage.
yeah,
oh yeah.
three most important people, men in my life. You know,
I like hiding like family members' names and stuff in books, and it's like I know that they'll probably never find them, but
Yeah.
if they do, it's going to be sometime during like Thanksgiving or something when you'll be like, I can't believe that you did this.
yeah.
And I'm
Or,
going to say,
you know, when-
it took you
when
that
we
long?
die, when we die, they'll finally read our fiction.
They'll find it, yeah.
Because nobody's reading, no family members are reading your books. Let's just set the record
Yeah.
straight.
We'll put a footnote at the bottom, like right at the bottom, and it sends you to the back of the book, and then it says, if you've got here, then surprise. Hope you like it. Oh, goodness. So true. So what about villains? Do you have any? This is a superhero. If it's inspired by the sprawling Marvel and DC, I would imagine there's some pretty good villains that you've come up with.
Yeah, you want to take it, Chris?
Can we really talk about the villain in the first book without?
Let's just be, yeah. Oh, you know that. I mean, that might be true. Spoilers.
First of all, yeah. There's my disclaimer is, I mean, you can be as vague as you would like, or because I've had people talk. I've had people talk and be like, sorry, I just slipped in whatever, it's out there, so who cares? But like, definitely, like, you could give hints of what to
The
expect.
vague is that we love DC villains. Both of us, I think, right? We are. Batman specifically has the greatest villains of all time. And what I think is so beautiful about them is that they're realistic in what they are. I almost feel like if, you know, of course, Gotham's ridiculous, right? Like, why doesn't the army just send in the Marines? Or why doesn't the government just send in the Marines, right? We just have to buy the fact that Joker can take over the entire city and America doesn't give a crap that it's happening. And Superman's over there banging Lois Lane and is just too busy to step out of the city and save these people. I don't know what they're thinking, but they're also very realistic in the sense that, like, I can see that happening. And so our villains are very sort of grounded. There are mentions of very over the top. I mean, it is still comic books. And, you know, we still have Music Master who hypnotizes everybody by playing his guitar, right? Like, those things still exist. But at least I believe we did it in such a way that grounds them. And they're human, but they're human that have just fricked up. They belong in an insane asylum for their actions, right? Is that fair, Chris?
Yeah, I would say that's a good one. Yeah, and then we have groups. It builds up kind of. So, you know, the first one we have a main antagonist, and then the second one is, you know, Sawyer forms a team and he fights his team of villains. Very grounded, also. And then the third
Accidentally
book,
Cobra Kai.
it's what?
It's accidentally Cobra Kai.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
The best way, I think.
Well, it just goes to reason that if there's a group of heroes, there's going to be a group of villains somewhere waiting, because they will not be left out of the fun.
Yep.
So since it's sort of spoilerific, what you mentioned the Joker, is that sort of the DC villain that you drew inspiration from starting out as you came up with your villain squad or villain league?
I think we could be honest here in that our first draft of this book, the character was very much the Joker, to a point where actually we weren't sure how we were going to play his sort of theme yet. So we created him as a clown. We just went with it because we needed to get the book finished, and we didn't quite know what he was going to do yet. So the inspiration for the Joker character is definitely there. We don't try to hide it. We have no intention of trying to hide it. It's not a full-on parody or a ripoff or anything like that, but I said it at the beginning. We love Marvel and DC, and we wanted the books to kind of be Marvel, not Marvel, DC, not DC, and just like let our readers enjoy what we all love and appreciate. So yeah, that character, that Joker character exists. And then I think probably anybody who loves comics as much as we do could like draw the lines and the parallels between all the characters. And I actually think Chris and I decided that, you know, in so many ways, every character within our universe, if not most characters, have the Marvel analog and the DC analog smashed together on purpose. It was all, you know, intentional. And we've talked a million times about how awful that sort of sounds, because the last thing we want is people to think that we're, I don't know, ripping off. But what we're actually hopefully doing is paying that homage while also making it something brand new that people can love and appreciate.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing where a lot of newer writers are afraid to sort of mimic what they enjoy, but it's such a good starting point. If you already know what you like and you know what works, then I mean, you're basically just building on the skeleton of something that you already love. So
there's nothing new, right? I mean, there's nothing new out there.
There is nothing new, really. So don't be afraid. I mean, there's the joke of like, oh, you just file off the serial numbers, but really, when it goes through your creative voice, it'll come out as your own writing, even if you are.
We're not writing the Bible here. Like, this is pulp fiction. It's all pulp fiction today. Amazon has created a pulp fiction market. A reader reads it today, and by next week, they forgot what they read. And so all we intend to do is entertain somebody for 4 hours, enough that they want to pick up the next 4 hours and then the next 4 hours, and hopefully just make their day better, right? People read a book a day now. Just make their day better. That's the only goal.
Absolutely. And I think it's hilarious. I've seen, like, I prowl Reddit a bunch of too many hours and looking for recommendations and stuff. And the number of times that there is like a string of people being like, heading, I'm looking for a book that I read like 2 years ago on Amazon. It's about this, this, and this. Can't tell you more than that. Somebody always comes out of the woodwork and is like, oh, I know that book. And it's like, how? I can't even, like, it's definitely the future digital pulp fiction, basically, like you say. And then they go back and reread it.
The other thing I like about it is you can kind of pull the rug out from under the reader by lulling them into a state of like almost like security, thinking, oh, okay, I get what this is. And then all of a sudden you do something that never would happen in Marvel or DC, like with that character they think is just like your character you're writing, and then it's even more of a surprise because they've kind of, instead of just having it be something they never would have imagined, they have this sense of they think they know what's going on.
I've had several readers so far. I mean, it's only been one day. Now, we had some ARC readers, right? So like some people beforehand, but several readers, maybe 5 or 6, text me, message me, another superhero in New York. And I go, just wait. And every single one of them by the end went, I can't believe that. That was awesome, right? Because like we set a foundation for, you know what you're going to get. But then by the end, you don't have a clue. It's not what you think it's going to be. And I even listened to it because it came out on audio yesterday simultaneously. It's actually free for anyone who has Audible Premium or Audible Plus. Narrated by Jack Mallow. She does an amazing job. He did Jim Butcher's Spider-Man Darkest Hours and absolutely nailed our book to a point where I'm listening to it going, this is so good. He is so good at what he does. We get to choose our narrators. Because I own a publishing company, we tell them who we want and they make it happen. There was really no better choice at all. He nailed it so good. And at the end of the whole performance, I just, like I said, I listened to it and I went, if I were just listening, I would have thought I knew exactly what we were doing. And then at the end, if I were a listener, I'm like, man, it's good. It's good audio.
Excellent. Well, that is, it's basically the new frontier of in the same way that like the digital publishing is like pulp fiction. I feel like the audio world, it's like the future of like radio plays that we would all just like sit around and listen to, but now everyone is commuting or enjoying their content as they're like doing house chores and stuff. And it's like, it's so nice because I remember the gap of when I was younger, finding out that like, oh, people used to listen to superhero stories like on the
Right.
radio, and that's the first way they ever heard them. And now you can go and it's like the tradition is being continued with audiobooks. I think it's so cool.
Audio's made my career, right? You announced at the beginning I'm a #1 Audible bestseller. I mean, that means like literally the #1 book on Audible. That's my career. And I mean, I sell ebooks and stuff, but like I expect and I hope that because Sidekick is completely free on Plus, that, you know, we had Baron Steel. I don't know if you had that. Baron Steel was a freebie that my other co-author, Rhett Bruno, wrote. That's in this same universe. That was sort of a foundation just to, I don't know, whet the palate or whet the appetite or whatever that phrase is that I'm looking for. Baron Steel exists within this Raptors universe. And if anyone enjoyed that, I'm really, really confident that they're going to enjoy the Raptors series.
So let me ask you this, because you mentioned the shared universe and characters that exist. For somebody who is listening who has not read anything from this universe, can you give us sort of like an overview tour of what the world is like? Is it, I mean, you say there's a big twist involving New York that you're obviously, I don't expect to have spoiled, but is it sort of, at least at the beginning, grounded in our reality, or is it like a
we love New
fictionalized?
York. Yeah, it's the characters that you're not going to expect.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So if you've been to New York, it's New York. We did extensive, right? I mean, like you and I made sure we, at least without being feet on the ground there in New York, like we did our best to make it feel like you could kind of know where you are at all times throughout the series.
Yeah, we could look on Google Maps, figure out where things are taking place, look at actual streets and cross streets and everything else. That's how we're pretty meticulous about that part. We have a scene
Hopefully we got it
in Scotland in the third book.
Third book in Scotland, some areas, you know, portion of the book is in Scotland.
We studied where, you know, all about it. We didn't just make stuff up, you know. So
That's
it's grounded in the
amazing.
real world. There is some background. We don't like spend the first part of every book with a bunch of origin stuff, as we were saying, but we do have explanations mixed in, you know, so that people understand where these people came from. And, you know, there's a big super team, and they are the, you know, what you'd expect from the biggest super team in the world. You know, they have very powerful characters that, you know, kind of look down on some little sidekick like Sawyer, you know, and
Poor Sawyer.
Poor
He's not a
Sawyer.
sidekick. He's a partner.
yes,
Very
yes.
important throughout the series that he's not a sidekick. He's a partner.
Yeah, he hates the word sidekick.
Very relatable, even though it's like larger than life characters. Very relatable to have someone that is trying to be seen as like they're trying to value themselves. They want others to value them the way that they value themselves. And I feel like the partner characters in these superhero stories, sometimes it's like that is a relatable position for some of the readers to be in, where they're not the head honcho of what their life. They're doing somebody else's bidding. And it's like, yeah, of course, the main hero is going to send you out and be like, okay, go take care of this for me, or go clean this up for me. And it's like, no, come on. I'm sure they don't expect to be the sidekick or the partner forever.
That's what I loved about Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming, was there was that overarching, am I Avenger yet? Am I an Avenger yet? Am I an Avenger yet? Like, and Tom Holland did it so well that you just wanted him to get that, right? And that was something that I really, really appreciated that Marvel did, right? And I actually was thinking about Homecoming recently, and obviously Marvel built the whole freaking movie around that name because it was him coming home from Sony, right, to Marvel. And they did such a good job of giving us everything that we wanted from Spider-Man that, forgive me, Sony failed to give us for so long. And as much as I have no intention of dissing Marvel and DC in the area of novel fiction, I really, really hope that what we are delivering is what I've wanted for so long from Marvel and DC fiction books. it just doesn't exist that way. And Jim Butcher did it amazingly. Darkest Hours, greatest Marvel book ever written, because Jim is a superhero junkie, and it came across on screen that he knows who Spider-Man is, he knows who Peter Parker is, and he did it right. He did it first person, and we really just were there with him. And so, like, that was on my heart, I know, when we were writing it. How do we give them what Jim gave us from Marvel?
Absolutely. So Spider-Man is perhaps my favorite hero from when I was young. Besides Superman, those are like my two that I'll always go back to. And it's like, I feel like they both have such different voices, but the Spider-Man voice, and I'm sure it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to do in a book, because it's easy in the comics when he just has a couple bubbles per page to say something, but then to fill out entire pages and pages of inner monologue, like that'll be what you guys are delivering, like because the comic book writers doesn't always translate well, as you say. And I agree. It's not bashing their books. I've read a lot of them.
They're my heroes, right? So there's no intention to be disrespectful at all. It's just, it's just this one area.
Yeah, we tried really hard to really capture the voice of a teenage boy, almost to a fault in some cases, maybe, where people might go, "Oh, well, he shouldn't be saying that in 2021 or whatever."
What was the line? Can we just say the line? There was the line. I texted Chris yesterday as I was listening through. I'm like, somebody's going to hate us for this. The line was that one of the characters was being passive aggressive, and Sawyer says, "Man, I thought only women did this passive aggressive."
Oh my god!
But I mean, he's 16, and that's just like, we wrote it from his perspective, and we hope. Baron Steele got some crap from a lot of people because Baron Steele is very right-wing, corporate, liberal, calls people snowflakes, right? And I've got some reviews that, like, people can't separate the author from the character. And Baron Steele is that corporate businessman, and that is who he is through the whole thing. And Sawyer is just this 16-year-old kid who has that he's awkward around girls. He's had no dad. He just like lives that life. And we tried our hardest to get into his head. And like Chris said, sometimes people might not be able to realize that that's Sawyer and not Jamie and Chris somehow giving you our view of things through his lens.
Yes. I feel like it's not fair sometimes of the readers. Sorry, readers, if you're listening, but I feel like it's not fair in the superhero genre to hold up the authors to the standards of their characters, because when you read other genres like crime and thriller, you're not going to instantly be like, oh, so how many people has this author gone out and murdered to get experience to write this murder mystery? So it's you do have to like separate it, because, and especially if you're writing under a pen name, or even as yourself, if you don't have a social media presence, then you don't have a way to tell. I can see where it would be tricky for some readers that are obsessive. Like I've certainly gone, and this is partly why this podcast was created, was because I wanted more self-published and like small press authors to have their voices out there, because I read their books and then I want to know, who are they? What, like, how do they work? Like, because they're big names, we know all about them, but the smaller in like publishing, the formula, the way that you get your books published. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot out there, and I feel like it's because it's just not something that the indie authors think to do.
Yeah.
But I definitely I love hearing how diverse everyone's processes are, and like it is one genre's overall superhero, but like there's so many different types, and you never know what you're going to get. And you could live anywhere in the world. You could live in the backwoods, and you could be writing about New York like you guys have done by doing research we have instant access to like Google Maps and all that stuff. So you don't have to travel, and you don't have to be in a metropolitan city to write realistic worlds and superhero stuff. So
yeah.
That was my ramble. That was my tangents. So, all right, that sort of was a segue into the next question, which is, what are some of the things that inspired you? You mentioned Batman, but was there more that inspired you, or was there a specific Batman arc that inspired you when you set out to write this series?
I don't know that there was any specific storyline that influenced us. I mean, it's definitely our own story. You know, it's not people may look at the characters and think that they seem familiar, but I don't think anyone's going to read the story and get to the end and go, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen. I've seen that. That was just like whatever," you know. I don't that part of it. I don't think there's an analogy. Do you, James?
I don't think when we set out to write Raptors, I mean, I think I'll be honest, I think this question might be a wash because I don't really have an answer outside of what we, sort of the different inspirations that we've had. I don't know that I'm not inspired a whole lot when I write. I just love to write. So I think that's probably, I've been inspired by decades of comic books and movies and animation and things of that nature that just went, I love superheroes. I had 5 anthologies under Steve Bollier. Steve Bollier Presents, and Chris was in all 5 of them, I think. We had 4 out of 5. We had It's a Bird, It's a Plane. These are all available on Amazon. It's a Bird, It's a Plane. We had World Domination. We had Collateral Damage, Ha Ha Ha, and Somebody Save Me. And all 5 of those are there. And it's over 60 authors coming together. We didn't create a shared universe in that, but we all shared our characters through something like 60 or 70 different stories, or 50 or 70 different stories, something around there, right? And it's always been something that has been a passion of mine. And sadly, I think anyone who's listening to this that's an author knows that there's not a ton of superhero fiction readers out there. Beyond that, even if there is, all the categories on Amazon are ripped apart by lit RPG, harem, urban fantasy. It's impossible to really get people to know that your story exists. And so you write, you're excited about what you're writing, but how do you get it to people? And so, I mean, that said, it's just like we've just been inspired by all of these different things that exist all around us, books, comics, movies. We're just nerds, and we wanted to write our own superhero books.
Yes. Do you? Okay. Hold on. I'm gonna mute you just because it's echoing on me. Okay, hold on. You can unmute yourself when you speak. Apologies. So this one could be subject to spoilers. So you can be vague on this one too if you want. Do you have a favorite plot line, or is there a twist that you wrote I guess you have 3 at least to come. So is there one that you can maybe hint at or mention that you were like particularly, and you said that you're a pantser, so something that probably came to you in the moment that you had to like immediately jot down and so that you wouldn't lose it?
We had a plan for book 2, what we were going to do and who the main villains were going to be. And then we were writing a scene at the beginning of the book. And we just came up with these characters on the fly just to throw in there for a scene. And we liked those characters so much after we started writing them that they became the main villains for book 2, and we booted the book 3 characters to the next book. And we still love the book 3 characters too, but we decided to save them till later. And so, that was pretty cool. It was a group of teenage bad guys, basically.
I think the beauty of pantsing is that we're not following an outline. And trust me, I get it. Outlines work for people. But as we were writing it, we just realized there's so much more story right here. And it ended up being 80,000 words worth of story. It ended up being an entire novel worth of story found in one 500-word passage. And ultimately, the book 3 story needed to be the end of the whole thing. It was so big, it was so epic, that at book 2 we'd have gone, now where do we go?
Mhm.
But it just ended up filling out that three-story arc so well. And Chris and I are already writing the next trilogy. It picks up where this one left off, but we are firm believers in start the series over, give everybody a new jump on place. We're not interested in trying to just bring people to book 4 when we can obviously start a new thing that book 1 through 3 readers are going to love, but new people can jump on. We always want the new people, right? That's why everyone does the reboot, because they think they're going to bring on new people. But there's also a way to just continue the story without rebooting the story. And I wish that sometimes we'd get that in the films. And I think Marvel finally is doing it. Finally is doing it with Spider-Man.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's such a luxury as writers that publish like fiction, and it's not tied down to like visuals, and it's not tied down to like corporate boardrooms looking at what their profits are going to be for merchandising. But I love the multiple entry points. Like I've mentioned it, I'm sure, on other videos where like R.A. Salvatore has trilogies, and it's like I could pick up the first book of any one of his trilogies and be like, I could just jump right in. And then who cares if you read the first trilogy? It's designed so you can go back and read about what happened before. It's not like a sprawling epic where you're exhausted just by picking up the first book and seeing like, oh man, I've got 12 more of these to go.
Just for poops and giggles, I interviewed R.A. Salvatore about 3 months ago. And for that interview, I went out. I wish I could just pick up my computer, but I have Icing Death and Twinkle hanging on my wall over there, Drizzt's 2 swords, and I specifically bought them because I was interviewing R.A. Salvatore. But he has been my number one author for, I don't know, decades. I mean, since I was 10 years old. And that's probably why I'm so big on trilogies, because he could have done what Jim Butcher did. Dresden Files is also one of my favorite things of all time. He's another author that Dresden's a bit of a chauvinist, so immediately Jim Butcher's an a-hole, right? Like that concept just doesn't compute with me, and he might be an a-hole, I don't know, but again, his character versus the author. But Jim did 18 books now, or however many it's been. And although you could jump on every Dresden book whenever you want, R.A. Salvatore made it so much more palatable in that you could just go, I want to read the Icewind Dale's trilogy, and then I want to jump in at Pirate Ghost King, whatever the name of that series was, Transitions. I love that. We wrote Raptors. Our next series is called Harrier, and they are very much connected. But our goal is to make sure that if somebody didn't read it Raptors, they could jump right in on Harrier and just be totally, this is awesome. This is a brand new superhero. There's hints at what happened in the Raptors series, but like you don't need to know. You're going to know everything you need to know right there in these 3 books.
So I have one other question relating to working in trilogies, because you say you're going to have another trilogy at least. So do you find as the writers that it's less exhausting because you're not trying to constantly up the ante by like if you were doing it as a long running like single series? I feel like that's where a lot of authors get burned out, is they're like, I'm at book 7, I've already almost destroyed the world 7 times or whatever. How am I going to top this? Do you find that it's easier to just sort of like reset and start at a book 1?
You want to answer, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the advantages. It's like a TV series. They may have a big bad arc over the course of a season, but then at the end of the season, it resolves, and then next season you start a new arc. And you're not under the pressure to just continue the same storyline through years. I think doing it with book series would be the same way.
Yeah, I've got a 6-book epic fantasy series, Web of Eyes. That's my number 1 Audible bestseller, Ippy Award winner, the whole thing, right? And it's 6 books long. It's over 1 million words. It's 100 hours worth of audio. Book 6 is 206,000 words or something. I mean, that was such a bear to write. At no point, I mean, we planned it well. So like at no point we're like, how do we top this? But at the same time, we might have benefited from doing a 3-book trilogy and then doing another 3-book trilogy, because it really is a 3-book arc and then another 3-book arc. And I learned my lesson. That's why Chris and I are doing this, because we can have a 6-book series without it being a 6-book series.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's a lot of work. A lot of freaking work to write 1 million words.
Oh yeah, especially if you're sort of like figuring it out as you go along. That is so daunting. That's like being at the bottom of Mount Everest and being like, oh, eventually get
and really all you know is like, that's the top.
Yes.
And that's where I want to be. And that is what pantsing is like, right? Like there's the top of the mountain. I know what it looks like. I know roughly what it's going to take to get there, but you have quite literally no idea what's going to happen along the way. And there's a beauty for me of letting your characters make the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dean Wesley Smith talks about this all the time, writing Into the Dark. Sawyer got to make so many decisions along the way, such as we got to decide who the main villains were going to be for book 2, because Sawyer related to them in such a way that it made sense. But if we had a staunch outline that said, this is book 2, this is book 3, we never would have gotten there. We would have just written it, and I'm telling you, I could say with all certainty it would have been a worse series for it. I think it still would have read well, but it would have been a worse series for it, for sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been as surprising as you were coming up with it, which I think is like half the battle, is surprising yourself and not getting bored. Even if you have something that's making money, I mean, how many authors out there where their first book takes off, or at least their first book in a series takes off, and then it takes them years to get over themselves and actually work on a second book, because it's just boring. If you know where you're going, you're done the outline.
Let me give you the secret ingredient. Every author who doesn't know this, I say this with all humility, but super arrogantly, right? Like, don't release your first book until the entire series is done.
So is that how that's
Absolutely.
how you've done this one?
I've never released a series as we go. That's insane, because what if it fails? You're never going to want to write book 2. You're never going to want to write book 3. And we live in a world where most series fail, and the only option that you have is a box set.
Mm-hmm.
So, and your box set could absolutely kill, but you're never going to have a box set if you don't have all 3 books written. So we wrote Raptors 1, 2, and 3. We're releasing them one at a time. We got our audio deal before that. We released the audio and we're going to do the exact same thing with Harrier. We'll write 3 books and we'll have a plan. And if it takes, whatever, I mean, we're going to do it. It's just how you have to do it in this particular age that we live in.
And the other thing I want to add about pantsing, even though a lot of people don't like it, I know a lot of authors think it's horrible, is a lot of times I'll be writing, it'll be 2 or 3 in the morning, and the characters just start doing something I'm not expecting, and they just, you can't do that if your outline is too, structured, if it's limiting, if you can't just kind of have that freedom to, and of course we go back and we go over and over and rewrite, constantly rewriting everything so it falls into place. So it's not like we're just la-di-da. But,
mm-hmm.
I'm always la-di-da. What are you, crazy? I'm always
That's the big, and I read Dean Wesley Smith's, I followed his blog for a long time, and I read his Writing Into the Dark book, and like, it's so useful, just like going back as stuff changes and just quickly adjusting the previous chapters a little bit here and there, and it all comes together in the end. It's
now
not
think
like
of that as a series. As a series, you're doing that. If you have 3 books that you don't release until all of them are done, at book 3 you could go, crap, that's an amazing idea. Go back to book 1.
Yes.
And you might even get another book out of it. Who knows? But like, if you release book 1, you are stuck with that story you've told forever, or until you decide to relaunch it.
Yeah,
I think I'm changing my entire thing. I'm going to change my entire plan of how I do things now, just because that makes a whole lot of sense to me now.
Yeah, there's a lot of times.
they're just in such a hurry because everyone wants to be a full-time author. And I'm telling you right now, most people, I run a publishing company. I've got 100 and something authors. 9 out of 10 authors will never, ever get an opportunity to be full-time. Even if they have one hit, they're going to think I should go full-time. Don't do it, because your next series might do nothing. Amazon is about series, not about authors, and it always will be that. So, that said, just take your time. You might always be the greeter at Walmart. You might not be, right? But if we're doing this because we love it, do it right so that you actually give yourself an opportunity for success. You can't release a book 1 now and then 8 months from now release it. No one is going to buy it because everyone has forgotten about it by 200 books by then. Mm-hmm. And they might have loved it, but they have so many books they've read before then that they'll just go, I don't even remember what happened. I'm not going to read book 2.
Yes.
I'm just being honest. I mean, I've done this a lot. This is my life. I publish books for a living. So
I was like, Chris, you were going to chime in with something. What did you got? What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say there were quite a bit of things, just little things mostly, but little things that we went back and we had to go back to book 1 while we're writing book 2 and change things so it lines up to our new idea, which is better. And then in book 3, we had to go back to book 1 and book 2 and change things so they lined up with our better idea that we came up with in book 3. And if we had published them already, we couldn't have done that.
Yeah, that's where you get into the George R.R. Martin situation where you've written yourself into such a wall that you don't know how to get over it.
Can I tell you, listen, I told you I love talking. I'll talk forever. You can edit it. George R.R. Martin, my opinion is that he would be smarter to never finish this series. Ever. If I were him, I would never finish this series. I would rather die being the guy who had phenomenal books and a decent TV show than F up his entire series, because no fan is ever going to be happy with what he does. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely at a place. Patrick Rothfuss might even be at the same place. No one's ever going to be satisfied.
Patrick Rothfuss. This is my thing. If Patrick Rothfuss, he's never going to listen to this show. But if you are listening, Patrick, stop posting videos on your own YouTube channel with misleading titles saying, Patrick Rothfuss speaks. What's going to be in the Doors of Stone? You're never going to finish it. And for George, if you're listening, I know what his problem is. Probably his problem is that he does not resurrect Jon Snow, and the show did that, and that was probably one of their biggest things that they ever did that was against his books. And he knows that if he doesn't do that, and then also have a team up with Lady Stoneheart, then it's going to be so disappointing. It's probably going to be disappointing either way. But
George said straight up that he'd rather play video games. That was out of his own mouth, and I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either. It's so much more fun than
he doesn't owe anyone. I get into these arguments all the time. I say arguments. I'm an amicable person. I'm not trying to argue, but people all the time are like, "Well, you owe your authors to finish the series."
Readers.
I'm sorry, you don't. Readers, you owe your readers. I'm sorry, I don't owe you anything. This is what I do. I would love to finish everything that I do. But if a series starts off, that's why I do all 3 at once, because if book 1 started and failed, I'm sorry if you read book 1, you're not getting book 2. I'm moving on to something because I have to feed my children.
Yes.
This is what I do to feed my kids. So I'm sorry if you wanted to know what happened, text me and I'll let you know. But that's why I never start a series unless I finish a series. And George doesn't have to finish this. He's old. And he probably doesn't want to write books anymore. I barely want to write books anymore. I can't imagine how he feels. And so I love your readers, but God, give the guy a break. Just watch the show, find the Starbucks cup, and just be happy with what you
the Starbucks cup. Oh boy, yeah. It is such a thing from readers that it's like, yes, you have to finish things, but they don't think that there have been full-on movie series that haven't even completed their adaptations because nobody showed up to watch them. So it's not just us writers of books that drop the ideas. There have been big movies that have been like, and come back next time, Golden Compass.
Yeah.
There is never a next time.
And like I said, I publish books for a living, right? I have hundreds, close to 1,000 books of data to prove some things here. The fact of the matter is, every author, we live in a 99-cent book world, okay? We live in KU world, and the only way to do anything right is to give it, it's 99 cents. Book one for Sidekick is 99 cents. It'll probably always be 99 cents because we want you to read book 2 and 3. We want you to read it on Kindle Unlimited. And we still have people complaining while drinking their $5 Starbucks that 99 cents is too much for a book, $1.99, $2.99. Meanwhile, every day that I wrote book 4 of the Buried Goddess Saga, I spent $5 sitting at Starbucks writing that book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just know where I was during Way of Gods. That was my period of time where I worked at Starbucks. It cost me like 5 times 90. What is that? $450 to write that book myself, like just in coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And people can't give me $4.99 for a book. No, I'm not going to finish it just because you want it done. George, don't do it. George, don't ever finish.
George,
Georgie, don't do it.
it is such a numbers game sometimes, and not to ramble, but I find myself as a reader doing that in my head sometimes, where I'll be like, man, I feel like I shouldn't spend this, and then I think I'm going to spend 3 times this on McDonald's for lunch, and I'm not even going to think twice about it. So
it's funny how we'll spend money on tomorrow's poop more than we will a $35 shirt or a $7 book.
Mm-hmm.
What?
So for the readers out there, it's not to belittle you guys, because like it is entertainment is the choice, but it is like 99 cents for a book. If I was a kid when I was a child, like 99 cents for a book, I had to beg my parents to spend $5 to get me a Goosebumps volume. So this like magic age of like being able to read books, and if it's in Kindle Unlimited, I mean, you could read so much. If you read a book a day, it's worth it. So,
well, I mean, I love my readers, right? But I don't love my readers that bitch about how much my books are. If you love me and if you want to read our books, buy the book for us, please. We've spent a lot of time on these books.
Yeah,
I love you. Love me back. Same thing, right, Chris?
Yep.
Love me back. Love
yes,
me
absolutely. So, speaking of more books, you said that this one is a trilogy. Can you tell us when readers that have read and devoured the first one, when can they expect the second one? And dare I ask, when can they expect the third one?
We have it planned. April 20th is book 2, simultaneously launched on Audible Plus, free on Audible. The whole series is free on Audible forever. You'll never have to pay for a dime for it on Audible, as long as you have an Audible membership. Mm-hmm. And then book 3 is what, May 22nd? May?
Yeah, around there. I don't know the
exact date. It's 1 month apart. So like if you read it now, you're going to get the books 1 month apart.
And the last one will be out prime late spring, early summer. That's like my favorite time to read. So it's like perfect timing. And especially since we're not going to be getting a whole lot of blockbusters at the theaters, and the comic book world right now is kind of like rebuilding itself and figuring itself out. Listeners, you have nothing holding you back. So I've only got a few questions left for you, so hopefully I don't drag you out too long. But obviously you can say books that are not part of the series if you would like, but where should readers, if they're new to you, where would you recommend that they start reading your work? Do you have
Chris, first, like we're talking Raptors at this point, and then I'll kind of throw my crap out there.
Most of my work is short stories, so there's a bunch of anthologies I was in before and stuff like that. I had a book in Kindle Worlds that disappeared because they got rid of Kindle Worlds. So
I remember Kindle Worlds.
Yeah, it was in Dick Webb's Legacy Fleet universe, and then I had a history book if anyone's interested. It's about my great 5 great grandfather, who was a British admiral in the Revolutionary War. He was one of the bad guys.
Oh.
Unless you're in England watching this, and then he was one of the good
Then
guys.
he's a good guy.
He was like-
Hero. That's it. Then he's a hero.
Yeah. It's basically because of him that Canada is not part of the United States, by the way.
Oh my
If you want to
gosh.
know why, you have to read the book, though. Yeah.
We could have had
Canada-
that much more space.
He
But I
said-
live in Texas. I don't live in America anyway. So
You guys are your own thing right now.
Oh, yeah. we're all Texas. So Sidekick, right? Though, so we start Raptors with Sidekick, and then you'll have Super Team come out in April. You'll have Scions come out in May. If you want to read any of my other stuff, Web of Eyes is the starting point for the Buried Goddess saga, which is 6 books long. On Audible, it's narrated by Luke Daniels, who is a Hall of Fame, tremendous narrator. The Luna Missile Crisis is sci-fi 60s alternative history of the Cold War. As a matter of fact, we leaned on Chris a little bit for some of the history there to make sure that we didn't F it up too bad. But that includes characters like JFK and Richard Nixon, and it's a very much a 60s alternate history if aliens showed up while Yuri Gagarin took off into space. So that's a book to jump on. And then Dead Acre is a freebie Audible Originals weird Western narrated by Roger Clark of Red Dead Redemption 2 fame. He plays Arthur Morgan in that. And I guess this might be the first time I'm officially saying it, but that series is coming. As of today, the ink is not even dry yet, but that series is coming. And that'll be a full weird Western with Roger Clark narrating. So excited about that. And then I think that's it. Oh, I've got a Lit RPG coming. If you're familiar with Lit RPG, it is a fantasy story that's sort of told like through the lens of a video game or tabletop role-playing game. Wrote that with Troy Osgood. That's coming out May 4th with Nick Padell as the narrator. Nick Padell is the god of Lit RPG narrators. And Ray Porter did Luna Missile Crisis, by the way. Listen, if I'm proud of anything at all, it is my collection of narrators. I've got R.C. Bray. R.C. Bray is on Baron Steel. I mean, like, I literally have the greatest narrators alive narrating my Audible collection. And that's, I mean, it has nothing to do with me. I mean, they're just tremendous narrators. And like every time I write a book, my goal is like, who do I get now?
Yes.
They could read a phone book and it would sound good.
Right,
Yes, they could. Especially
What's funny is that they did Audible did that a couple of years ago. They didn't do a phone book, but they did narrators reading New York City restaurant menus. And they published it as "You said you would listen, now do it." And Luke Daniels was on there. Several others, of course. I just remember Luke because I know him, and he's a friend, and he did those. But it was so funny just to listen to them do literally reading chicken cacciatore, $9.99. Right? It was just great. It was fantastic.
So I have a question about narrators for you.
Yeah.
So, do you have any narrators who, I mean, obviously you hire them and they're paid to read your work, but do you have any who have, in the course of narrating your series, have they become fans and have they asked you to do more?
It's so hard to know the answer to that. Okay, because I also own Athon Books and we have Athon Audio, and so we've pretty much worked with every narrator. Well, that's an exaggeration, but we've worked with most of the big narrators out there. And I say this like with all the respect to the narrators, I never know if they're honest about it or if they just want to get money. Like, who knows, right? Like, who's not going to say, I loved that, let me do another one. So I don't know. I mean, I've done interviews with Luke where we talked, and Luke said he really loved the Buried Goddess saga. R.C. Bray is a good friend of mine. We talk all the time. And like this book here, The Roach, by Rhett C. Bruno. Rhett's my co-author, and he owns Athon Books with me. That book literally exists because Bob Bray read the short story and said, please write this novel, and I'll narrate the novel. So, like, I mean, we've made friends with Bob, and, Kate Redding is a good friend, and, like, so
Kate Redding
Yeah.
is such a legend. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so Michael and Kate have done it. There's actually a series we did recently called Fall of Radiance by Blake Arthur Peel, and they did it together, and the box set just came out, and it's just such a beauty to listen to them together because they've done all the Brandon Sanderson stuff together and all of that. And so I don't know. I mean, I loosely know all the narrators. I have no idea if they're being honest with me.
It's like we hope they are. It's like that you hand them the next like 208,000 word manuscript and go, here you go.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Goodness, yeah. I guess I have to eventually get some narrators on here so I can ask them. But I've always had this like fantasized like scenario in my head where it's like, okay, so if you're like Michael Kramer and Kate Redding and they hand you like the next Wheel of Time book, I'm always like, oh, and they get to read that like 6 months ahead. Like, I wonder what that's like.
I'm pretty confident most of them, forgive me, narrators, if you ever listen to this, I'm pretty sure most of them don't really know what they're reading. A lot of times, I mean, they're doing a job, right? And I'm not saying they're too stupid to know what the story is, but like, that's their job. There's this delusion up front where you're like, oh, they're going to love my book. And then you sort of over time just realize they've read 200, 400 books this year or whatever. And like,
yes,
you're just one of another. You know, we published Lou Diamond Phillips. And like I said, please edit this out if this is just, I'm just talking to you as well. We edited Lou Diamond Phillips, who was La Bamba, major Hollywood actor. And I talked to him. He doesn't even know the name of some of the books that or the movies.
Oh, I'm sure.
No, I'm like, so I talked Gil Adler's, my executive producer. He's like, yeah, I did a thing with Lou Diamond back in 1992 or something. And I talked to Lou and he's like, I don't even remember the name of that. I have no idea what he's talking about. And then I look it up on IMDb and it's right there. And he just has no idea that it even existed.
Yeah. Once you get past a certain amount of volume, it like all blurs together.
You starred in this movie.
yeah. That's like the what's her face from the Iron Man movies saying like, I wasn't in Spider-Man. It's like you totally were. Was I? Yes, you were. It was probably just a giant blur though because of production.
Well, and the production, like a lot of these movies, they film several like alternate scenes so that the actors don't even know what's going to happen, so that they can't spoil it.
Oh yeah.
And they all do it separately, and you're like, they don't know what they're doing. They're just fulfilling a contract. And I feel that's the same with narrators a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I get two more questions. One basically is partially we've been doing it, but is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about and put out in the world?
No.
But no, I have to say I'm very as a like fanboy of some of these narrators. Like, I mean, it's really cool that you've worked with so many of them because I mean, it really does elevate the stuff, and the narrators can make or break an audiobook, as any audiobook listener knows. That even it could be the best written book ever, and if the narrator does not know what they're doing, you won't last 5 minutes listening to it. So.
Yes,
but anyway, my last question for you before I wrap this all up is, where can readers find you online if you want to be found? And also, where can they find your books?
Christopher?
ChristopherVallon.com is my website. And I'm on Facebook. I have an author page, Christopher J. Vallon. Author, and Twitter at Vallon Chris. Christopher is a longer name than people think. It's 11 letters. It often gets cut off at Christoph, with an e at the end. Like Twitter, I see these long Twitter names and I go, now how come I can't fit Christopher Vallon in there? Yes. It doesn't make sense to me. But sure enough, it's like one letter too many or whatever.
You could find me at Jamie Vallon. Jeez, JamieCastle.com. That's JAIME Castle.com. All of our books are available pretty much exclusively on Amazon and Audible. We're very much believers in that corporation that is going to take over the world, and we write books about corporations taking over the world. So we really want to be on their side when they take over the world. So jamiecastle.com, facebook.com/ author Jamie Castle. Just Google me, or Facebook search Jamie Castle. You can check out Aethon Books. I don't have any shame. We publish these books. I have no shame in pushing Aethon Books. It's AETHON books.com. We have hundreds of books that I'm confident that you will love. And that's about it, I think. Instagram, I don't know.
The book Instagram, oh no, whatever the whole. Well,
Audible, right? Please go on Audible and listen to our book for free. You will not be upset by listening to this book for free. It's just so well performed.
Excellent. Audible, yes. So everybody listening, you know where to go, you know what to do. Go read some books, go listen to some books, and then leave a review, or even contact the authors and let them know that you enjoy their stuff.
You can even email me, authorjamiecastle@gmail.com. I love getting email. Email me all day, as long as, I don't know, mail bomb me. Do people still do that? AOL mail bombs?
Oh, geez. Blasphemy. Oh, no. Well, on that note, I just thank you guys both for being on. This has been hilarious and entertaining. And I talked about a lot more than questions, so it's a good time.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So just to wrap this up, for the listeners, if you like Behind the Mask, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, whether you're new or old to the podcast, and I will see you guys next time.